Hello and welcome to Watch From Home Theater, our little corner of the internet here where we get to watch movies together even while we're apart. I'm Clint Gage, and this week we will be watching Star Trek First Contact. But take this opportunity right now to get your copy of the movie queued up. If you got it on digital or Blu-ray or DVD, whatever you got it on, get it queued up to the very beginning, the black screen right before the Paramount logo comes in. That's where we'll be starting from here in a minute. If you don't have a copy, there are links in the descriptions of places to buy or rent the film if you'd like to sync up with us. We don't have the film playing in the stream, so we are on your second screens tonight, but please take this opportunity to get your movies synced up so you can watch right along with us. So while you go take care of all of that business, co-hosting with me tonight, IGN Zone, Scott Calora. Scott, how you doing, man?
Hey, Clint. How you doing, man?
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I've never been on before, but this is the one for me because
Great.
Star Trek.
Yeah. Because Star Trek, and because of our very special guest joining us for this episode, the director of Star Trek First Contact, Commander Riker himself, Jonathan Frakes. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing?
The pleasure is mine. I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Doing okay. I'm wedged, my traditional place, wedged into the corner of my garage.
Your background tells the story about you.
that was the goal. I'm not sure what story it is. We might have to.
That's on action figures, I bet.
Yeah. What do you got back there, Scott?
I have that's Max Billion from Black Hole, the Disney film from 1979, and then I've got actually a Lon Chaney Sr. figure from a Lost. I think the film's Lost, a silent era film called London After Midnight, where he played a vampire. So that's what's back there. I tried to pretty up my room a little bit for this. It doesn't usually have as many action figures.
Sure. And you've got some framed pictures of fish. I see back there.
Yes, my son is a fly fisherman. I'm in his old room, and this seems like the kind of the most sublime part of the frame.
Here he is. Here's Jonathan Frakes framing up a shot for us.
Yeah, love it.
Look at that horrible headroom. There we go.
It's not a shot of the headroom, though. It's a shot of the fish.
Watch this. I know it's a shot of the fish. What about the lighting? There we go. Ooh, that's better.
Great.
There you
All right,
go.
and he'll be tweaking it throughout the night. So make sure you keep it locked here. Stay tuned for the new framing there on his camera. But like I said, we're going to start the movie here in a minute. But first, general question: we're watching First Contact tonight. Now, Jonathan, you've been a part of Star Trek through a handful of different series as an actor and as a director. What does First Contact, what does this film mean to you in the scope of all your work you've done with this franchise?
Well, First Contact, as you can imagine, entirely changed my trajectory of my career. I had done a number of episodes by this point, and when the show was canceled and we moved into these features, of course, I threw my hat in the ring. It was pretty clear that by the time Star Trek 8 was being made, they weren't going to get Steven Spielberg or Ridley Scott. So I thought I'd throw my hat in the ring, having had some success with the episodes that I had done. And Sherry Lansing, God bless her, who was the head of Paramount at the time, gave Rick Berman, my mentor and producer, sort of the green light to hire who he wanted. And the approval he needed to get was from Sir Patrick. And I had an in with him too. So, and as you'll see, everyone who's watching, the script was spectacular. So it was really my job to screw it up. It's arguably the strongest Star Trek script of any of the films. It was Brandon Braga and Ron Moore at the height of their power. It has the Borg, who are arguably our best and most, interesting and complicated nemesis, and the guest cast featuring my godmother, Alfre Woodard, Jamie James Cromwell from Babe, and the incredible Alice Krige as the Borg Queen. It didn't hurt that we had them as well. Matt Leonetti, the cinematographer, who essentially took me under his incredible wing and allowed me to learn the difference between television and movies. And in movies, that difference, which I'm sure you're at, the next question would be, you have a little more time and you have a little more money.
One thing about this film too, Jonathan, is that people don't often remember this, but it's the first Star Trek movie with none of the original cast. This was you had Shatner and a couple of the other guys in the previous one, so it must have been an extra level of pressure just because of that too, right? Could the Next Generation cast carry their own film?
Yeah, that's a good point. I actually never thought of it that way. Generations was successful, but I think it was not as successful as First Contact. I'm not sure the script was quite as strong, but the appeal for the fans, as with all the Star Trek movies and with all sort of franchise genre movies, the first weekend is essentially about the fans of Star Trek or the fans of Star Wars or the fans of whatever Marvel character of Thor. And then from that, the word of mouth either is you should see this whether you like Star Trek or not, or Thor or not, or this is only for the chosen. So First Contact worked out. Generations sort of worked out. Insurrection made some money, and then Nemesis didn't. And all of us franchise at Paramount, as we knew it, came to a screeching halt.
Yeah, I remember. And then, ironically, Star Trek Picard is sort of a sequel to Nemesis. So you guys got a chance to come back and follow up on that story in some ways, which is funny.
Let's watch the movie.
Yeah, let's get into the movie. So, let's get into the movie. We'll be. It's really good. It's very good. So we'll be hitting play here in just a second. But I just want to remind everybody that we will be taking questions from you guys. So wherever you're watching, on whatever platform you're watching this on, be sure to leave your questions and comments, or on Twitter using the hashtag WFHTheater. We'll try to take as many questions as we can during the show. But I think let's get the movie started. So without further ado, everybody get your cursors ready. Get ready to click or hit a button. We're gonna click play and gonna get a thumbs up from my TD here. 3, 2, 1, play. And the first question traditionally on Watch From Home Theater: what's your favorite studio logo?
I'm very fond of this one.
It's a good one.
I like the lion as well.
Oh yeah. So we do have some questions coming. We can turn that up for you just a little bit. But we do have some questions already coming in. A couple people have asked similar things. Somebody on Discord, Starfinder today on Discord, and Magnesium, who's watching on IGN's YouTube channel. They both asked, what was your favorite thing about directing First Contact?
The privilege of working with this family who I'd grown to love over the last, what had it been, 15 years by that point?
Yeah, it had been. So, I mean, this is the same, more or less the same crew that you've been with quite some time at this point.
There's Alfred. So am I not going to have any sound? Jamie. There's a little Jerry.
Ought to be able to turn it up a little bit. That's what we needed.
I just needed a little Jerry Goldsmith. That's all I'm asking. I don't need to see the acting. There he is, the greatest.
We were saying earlier that
they don't
make them like this anymore either, where we get the credits up front.
I remember approving these credits with Rick. The length, the music play. John Wheeler. This film was actually cut on film. Herman Zimmerman, carryover from the show. Matt Leonetti, my big brother. Oh, I love.
Yeah, I was going to ask how much of the production team carried over from the show.
Just Herman.
Just
and
Herman?
Peter Lawrenson, whose name we just saw, and Rick, obviously. Let's see who else gets producer credit. Brandon and Ron, obviously. That always feels good.
No matter how many times.
And this shot.
Yeah, this is a really cool way to open up this movie.
It was designed by Sid Dutton and me, inspired by a production of Sweeney Todd that I saw on Broadway, where the set was built out into the audience.
Oh, wow.
And this is definitely the biggest scope we ever saw of the Borg at this point. It was always fairly contained on the TV show, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, this is John Knoll, too, who, there we go. This gives you an idea of the style we were zooming with. Mm-hmm.
You made Patrick Stewart put the Borg costume back on.
Locutus is always with him. Oh.
I have a question about that eyeball shot. Was there any discussion about how far to take that eyeball? Because even just barely poking it is somehow worse than
puncturing it. Yeah, that was. And here we go. This sets them all up. Memories. These visual effects are great.
Yeah. You guys definitely...
John Knoll, who won the Oscar for Star Wars, is also famous for what?
Plenty. We were just talking about him with the Rogue One guys a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, you had Gary Whitta on, no?
Yeah.
John Knoll and his brother invented Photoshop.
Right.
That's right. So you guys made the conscious effort to push like the traditional rating for a Star Trek movie, though, I think, because of the Borg, I guess.
Yeah, I think it pushed itself.
Yeah, and especially opening up with this sequence of darker elements the way you it's really kind of gets you ready for a rougher ride, I suppose.
Hey, who's that guy?
Boy.
Jonathan, how involved were you with the region? Because this is an all entirely new look for Star Trek. The costumes are new. The ship is new. How involved were you on that level in terms of coming up with what things were going to look like?
Well, that was... There was a long enough prep to approve and design all these new elements. And yeah, it was... I'm proud to have been part of it. Even my hair is a little bit looser. Do you like these costumes, these First Contact costumes?
I thought they were great, and I thought, and what was cool about it too was the in the grand tradition of Star Trek always being very continuity aware of like what's happening on the different shows. Then they adopted them on Deep Space Nine too. All of a sudden, those guys were wearing those costumes, so it like made sense in the universe.
Look at that shot. Look at that artsy shit he's doing there.
Gotta love that reflection, and somebody comes and walks up behind them.
Never been used before. These scenes were always fabulous. Patrick and me in the ready room. I always look forward to these days on the show and the movies. They took time. They were simple. They addressed interesting issues. Things were discussed in this room.
There's lots of Easter eggs in this room too from the series. Lots of tidbits from Picard's past.
Bridge to Captain Picard.
Go ahead.
We've just received word from the fleet. They've engaged the Borg.
I do like that. Oh, go ahead, Scott.
You don't waste any time getting right to it either, I would say. I mean, here we go. We're already about to fight the Borg.
Marina. Neil McDonough introducing.
How did you find Neil?
I loved him. I thought he was great. Part of casting, people brought him to us.
He's one of the great
stand-in.
I do like this scene.
Too.
Yeah, oh yeah. I love how this scene is just them listening. Like there's no showing here other than just showing like the impact of what they're listening to.
Lieutenant Hawk, set a course for Earth. Aye, sir. Maximum warp.
Woo!
Couple minutes in, and we're already at maximum warp.
Any of you who wish to object should do so now. It will be noted in my log.
Holy shit.
Captain, I believe I speak for everyone here, sir, when I say to hell with our orders.
Data's my favorite. Bridge looks great.
This is a good spot to just remind everybody, if you're just now joining us, to make sure there is a time code that's running on screen with us here. That if you're just now joining us and want to sync up with us, that's the time code of the movie that you need to skip ahead to. We're sitting here in this battle with the first battle with the Borg cube here right at the beginning of the movie. And also wherever you're watching, make sure to leave some questions and comments. We'll try to get to them when we can. Get to as many of them as we can. We do have. Here's one question. We were just talking about the design of the Enterprise.
You know who that actor is?
Oh.
You see who? Look who's in this scene. Introducing. I love that line. Adam Scott, right there.
Yeah, he's the helmsman.
It's the Enterprise.
Parks and Rec.
And
I love work.
These ships are.
I love this movie. This is great.
Jonathan, you were working with the ships are you were still using models part of the time, I think, right?
I think we were, yes.
It has sustained heavy damage to its outer hull. I am reading fluctuations in their power grid.
This is a comment from Dr. Forrester watching on IGN's YouTube channel. Wondering if you were aware of there's a rumor that ILM was going to put the Millennium Falcon into the background of this battle with the Borg. Is that something that you had heard?
No, but I like it, and it's a rumor I will continue to spread.
Great.
I think if you frame advance and zoom in, there is a blurry thing there that could be the Millennium Falcon. So it's a fair rumor.
That John Knoll, you can't trust him.
Boy, he's astounding.
Here we go. I love Goldsmith's soundscape when the Borg sphere pops out and starts heading towards the. You guys start tracking it as it's heading towards Earth. It's just this like pulsating thing going on.
Yeah.
Mr. Hawk, pursuit course. Engage. Aye, sir.
So we just sort of you just gave Worf a nice bit of business there, big Klingon introduction. How obligated did you feel to give everyone something, all your castmates something to do? Because the feature is obviously different from a show, where a show you can give a guy, someone gets their own episode, but in the feature you have 2 hours to try to cover everyone.
That's a great question. Fortunately, Ron and Brannon and Rick had thought of that, and the characters. This is a great line, great moment, and that is the key. One of the keys to the success of this film is those comic beats are peppered in. They're momentary, and then then we restart the engine. I think that's one of the real tricks to Ron and Brannon's script that not always heralded as important and yet vital to especially an action adventure movie. And it's one of the secrets to the success, I think, of tonality. That action.
The atmosphere contains high concentrations of
Yeah, definitely.
and fluorine.
It's in there.
Population approximately 9 billion. All Borg.
Nice subtle camera moves too. And the bridge looks gorgeous. It's dark. This is a little Discovery-esque, this bridge, in terms of the lighting.
Yeah, it's true.
Because we've had a couple of people ask that specifically on some of the Jason Blona. Sorry if I mispronounced that. Who's watching on IGN's YouTube is asking how much input you or what was the process like of designing this new Enterprise and the new bridge. There's been a handful of questions asking about even what your favorite bridge has been to work on.
I'm crazy about the Discovery Bridge, and the alternate universe Discovery Bridge was spectacular. Here we go. We're up in the Angeles Crest Forest. Alfred and Jamie, after the bombing. These two. What a great guest cast.
Jonathan, can you tell us a bit about why you call Alfred your godmother?
Oh, when I first came to Los Angeles, my college roommate, Nathan Cook, who is an actor probably remembered from White Shadow and Hotel, he had come out here first, and he was with Alfred at the Taper, and they were dating. And when I first arrived, we were at a barbecue, and we started to talk about our families, and somehow it turned out, or I never had a godmother. I said, "What?" And she said, "Well, I'll be your godmother," after having just met her. And I said, "What does that mean?" She said, "I will take care of your spiritual life."
Yeah.
How about that?
Nice.
Nice.
That's a very spiritual woman, too. And what a great gift to the profession and to this movie to have her. And Jamie had just come off Babe.
The hell with the Phoenix.
Yeah, he was nominated for an Oscar for it, I think.
Exactly.
Well, when you're casting a picture like this, do you find that some actors are resistant to do something like Star Trek? They don't want to be associated with something of the genre like that?
Absolutely. What happens, at least in my experience, they offer these lead parts to big movie stars, and each time you make an offer to a movie star, you have to wait whatever it is, 7 days or 5 days. So each offer has to get accepted or denied, and then that you're going to use actors who either audition or actors who or actors, So there's always this dreamy idea that we're going to have Tom Hanks, or we're going to, there's that exists with every movie, every television show. Everybody has a pie in the sky idea. Well, they're huge fans of Star Trek. That's great. Robin Williams, John Goodman. But then you offer them a job, and they either have something else, or they don't really want to be in Star Trek. But I can't imagine 3 better leads to join our cast than the 3 we got in the.
Oh, they're great. We haven't seen Alice yet. But yeah, all three of them. Yeah, because that's one rumor that has always been out there about this film is that Hanks was up for Zefram Cochrane. Or is there any truth to that, or is it exactly what you just described?
I actually used that name. I used that name randomly. I don't remember that as a fact.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's a fact or not either. It's just I know it's something that's floated around out there for years.
There's a couple questions about
This is
James
civilian.
Cromwell.
Yeah.
Sydney Lau is
tallest living vegan.
James Cromwell is. Sydney Lau is watching on the Star Trek Facebook. What do you think made James Cromwell the best choice for the role of Zefram Cochrane?
I think the wry humor and the sort of sacrilegious approach he had to, and the devil may care attitude and his physicality, and he's a wonderful actor, as we said. Wonderful, open, freedom, physically free, and doesn't have a lot of patience, and yet he's very likable. It's down in underneath the missile silo in.
Yeah, this is
we
a
have
real
a descender rig that they built from here.
And this was a real missile silo, right?
There's Alfred. Yeah, we were on location for a week or so out here. And there's your PG-13. Here's boom.
I do love Alfre Woodard's. I do love her character, just her attitude, and we'll see more of it later when she runs into Picard. But I don't blame her. She's just mad to be like swept up in this, which is such a great energy to put into the middle of this whole movie.
But she's also a great like identifying character for the kind of non-Trek fans, right? To come in and be swept into this universe and help, sometimes Picard explains something to her, and it's like for the non-Trekkies, it's like she's a character who's kind of on the same journey as them when they're watching the film, I think.
She is the audience.
Right.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
And I know I've heard you guys talk about how much you hate wearing the spacesuits, so I'm sure
It was so great to have these clothes on.
Yeah, on location and no spacesuit.
And is this the first time we were able to get Geordi out of his?
Yep. Yeah. Can you tell us a bit about that? Yeah. He doesn't have the hair bonnet on anymore.
Yeah.
Was that
For
you?
Years, no, that was LeVar and me, and I think everyone at this point. One of the great tools of any actor is his or her eyes, and enough already with the hairband or whatever the hell that was.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was a company decision that I know LeVar quite well, and for him it was not a moment too soon.
I can imagine.
And we'll see later on. We get a close up of the. They actually look really cool. He's got bionic eyes now, which looks way better than the visor ever did anyway.
Exactly, and does the same thing. Patrick.
LeVar got a great scene in your next movie, Insurrection, where his character.
I was just thinking about that. And he's looking over the Baku village.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think he knows he's looking at the sunset and he knows that he's going to lose it, I think, or something like that. He's going to go back to not being able to see. Terrific stuff.
And we're back to this theme of Data trying to understand being human.
Yeah, and I do like the this is another really well written scene where with the just talking about touch, the sense of touch, and what it means to human, and like setting that for Data later on.
Yeah,
He has to be here. There was nothing more important to him than this ship.
that's true. The stuff with the Borg Queen later on.
Captain, we should consider the possibility.
Was the in the last film they had given Data emotions with this emotion chip? Did that make it harder to figure out what to do with the character this time around?
I thought Brent handled it beautifully. It was there when needed, and it didn't seem to it enhanced his character, but it didn't seem to change his character in any. These two poor guys. This is like being a red shirt here.
I think they're going to be okay, Jonathan. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yes, spoilers for later on in the scene, but.
Well, what were your influences when you're making? I mean, obviously here we're getting a very, horror movie kind of vibe. Did you go and look at certain films to prep for this?
I always try to steal from the best. I steal from Spielberg all the time. And Ridley Scott, who I mentioned earlier.
Sure.
And John Frankenheimer, Zemeckis. I mean, a lot of it, great. I was always told to steal from the good ones.
Yeah.
That right there. Stay low. Put your close up just under.
I like
right under the eyes. This is a great steady cam shot.
And they're just picking up the pace.
Yeah, that slow push in to then this really quick bit of movement. It's very, very cool shot.
Yeah, good frame. Everybody stayed in it, and in a practical set. Greg Lukenbach, Steadicam, par excellence. There's Nurse Ogawa.
I believe it's her last appearance as the character too. She was great.
Yes, she's still at the conventions.
Yeah.
Come out of war. I need to know exactly what's been happening.
So we just touched on some of the darker elements, or some of the that push the rating a little bit for the first time. There's been a bunch of questions already pop up about why it was decided to go for a PG-13 rating and what that process was like. Were there any concerns when you were going into the development with this about pushing the rating a little bit?
I think the decision had been made before I was hired, to be frank. I think that Paramount felt that it would widen their audience and it wouldn't threaten their audience. But I'm completely uninformed. That would be just my guess.
Enterprise to away team.
Oh no, Riker's in trouble. Luckily.
Let's talk about it. So from this point on, they can't. The communication with the away team has been cut off, and so you start these the parallel parts of the story. I mean, talk about it. How are you balancing those two stories and keeping everything compelling, going back and forth?
Well, I think that again, if the script is cut or written in a way that you don't feel it gets too one-sided, and very 90s shot. The colored lights. And when Alfred and Patrick become really the story, and this is a great cameo.
Yeah. Was that a mandate from Berman?
No, this was an idea that Ron and Brannon had. We tried to repeat in Insurrection. We had a scene with Armin Shimmerman,
right,
and it didn't work. It didn't work as well as this. And I remember before the screening of Insurrection, I had to call Armin and say, "Dude, I got bad news."
Ah.
Yeah.
what was it? It just didn't work in the context of the rest of the film.
I don't think it had the same kind of impact that this had. It didn't move the story along. It didn't have. It had nothing to do with Armin. And
right.
Here she goes.
It's kind of irresponsible of Beverly to lose that 21st century Earth woman.
I know she's been on the ship for 10 minutes.
Now here we get into like, this is like badass Picard, right? Where he's got a machine gun and he's buff.
He loves this. Patrick loves to get his clothes off.
Yeah,
he's so fit.
Yeah.
I was going to ask when we get to the end, which one of you like demanded he be in a tank top swinging around on the?
He's still fit. He's almost 80 years old, and he's fit as a fiddle. He's a boxer.
But he must have bulked up for this, though, because right? I mean, he's got guns when he takes his shirt off.
Yeah, no, he's got guns now, man. He's fit.
Really?
Yeah. He's fucking Captain Picard.
Okay, you're right.
Come on.
So you mentioned the deleted scene from Insurrection. Was there anything that got cut from this? I don't recall ever really seeing much by way of deleted scene.
No, but here's a favorite scene.
Oh, this is amazing. She's so great.
Great scene. She's brilliant. And Peter Lorreson found this song.
This is Roy Orbison?
Yeah.
Or
Underused Roy Orbison. My wife likes me in this scene. She said, "You were so relaxed." I said, "Oh, I was exhausted." She said, "You act better when you're tired."
Be tired more often.
Will Riker? Zephram Cochrane.
Deanna's not used to the regular alcohol. She's used to that stuff.
No.
Forward.
She's fantastic in this.
Here's is there a difference in approach for you for this movie? Because there's, the parts of the film that take place, hundreds of years in the future versus the more near future science fiction that's here in the 2063. Is there any sort of difference in approach there in how you, I mean, obviously production design and things like that, but what was different for you about portraying a time period that's closer to present day?
That's a great question. I think I leaned on the production design and the costume design and the dialogue and the place and the location. The storytelling is, the style of the film is the same, but that's a very interesting question to which I don't have a good answer.
Can you tell us a little bit about staging this scene? I know this is at the start of the scene. It's just one like master shot for quite a while before you cut in. What did you guys rehearse this a lot? How did you get Marina to this point where she plays such a terrific drunk?
I asked her if she wanted to do her coverage first or if she wanted me to come to her, because after we do the master, you have a choice of who you're gonna cover. I like to get my shit out of the way, so I suspect her first, and then Jamie, and then Marina, and she was just, I mean, she just got better and better. She's a wonderful, wonderful actor.
She's really good. It's a primitive culture.
There's a question here about this scene. Jacoby Roby, who's watching on IGN's YouTube, did you intend to have these two display chemistry in this scene to foreshadow their eventual getting back together in Resurrection?
Wow, Insurrection. You talk about
Insurrection.
Riker,
yeah.
Riker
I read Jacoby's typo. Sorry about that.
It was a great shot. Are you talking about Riker and Troy?
Yeah.
Marina and I felt that after the pilot of Next Gen, the writers had somehow, it was a great sequence of shots, had managed to sweep under the carpet the fact that those two characters had a very strong relationship when the series started that was neglected in a lot of the episodes, 182 hours of television. Marina and I held on to it. It informed our behavior. It informed us together in scenes, in the group scenes, and scenes when we were. And then when, so everything we did together was informed by the fact that we still loved each other and had a very complicated, and we were empathic, and we had a very, very conscious effort to keep that alive.
Captain,
And
I believe I am feeling
maybe we think
anxiety.
that helped to inform the beginning
It is an
of
intriguing
Nemesis.
sensation.
Because it was Nemesis that we got married in.
Right. I think in Insurrection, you guys are in the bathtub together or something after everyone's feeling
Wow.
like they're teenagers again. And
She gave me a shave.
that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, smooth as an android's bottom.
Very good.
There's a lot of POV shots in this film, too.
Yeah, this was something, and we had time to, and I learned that it's important for the editor to give us options.
Lopez, get these people back to deck 14.
So we're selling a new set. I mean, the whole bridge was Borgified.
Right.
She has no idea what's going on. Try to find her.
Yeah, come on, Crusher. You lost her on your watch.
And then she dumps it on Borg.
Let somebody point it out.
Problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at this. That's creepy.
These are simple old horror movie tropes with the shadows,
Yeah.
sound design, fisheye lenses. That's Borg vision right there. That's the 8mm spherical lens.
So that's all in camera, that distortion?
Yes,
Oh, wow.
that Borg vision was a lens that we threw on.
They're so creepy, too, because they just ignore you.
Yeah, there's
that's
some, obviously some real zombie energy to the Borg.
Yeah.
So and we talked earlier about some of your inspirations and some of the things that you watched leading up to this. I want to know specifically, were there any horror movies? Because there's some, we haven't gotten to it yet, but there's some 80s Cronenberg-ish kind of body horror coming up with the Borg as well.
Nothing pops into my head. I remember being terrified by Saw, but I think Saw was after this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Manual release is online.
Jonathan, was there ever a point when you were making the film where you were like, oh man, I'm blowing it. This isn't going to work. Like everything's going horribly wrong. Or did you always know that it was going to work out as well as it did?
I don't think you ever know. I had great faith, and I'm a pretty optimistic guy. And I had I felt like all the parts were there. That's why I wasn't really kidding when I said earlier that it was mine to screw up, because I had certainly been given all the right tools, all the right people in front of and behind the camera. And it was just, I talk about a scene that's coming up often as one of the favorite things I ever did, and it was as simple as sitting on the floor and watching Patrick and Alfred do the little ship scene, and when he crashes the glass.
Yeah,
it was fantastic. I mean, his action stuff is great. These stunt guys were great. These poor Borg had to come in at 3 a.m. Great sound. I missed it. And we had a separate Borg crew because they were there hours before we arrived.
sure.
Yeah.
And the Borg are completely redesigned from how they looked in the show also. It's so much more intricate and complicated than it was previously.
Well, I think again it was the example of having more time and more money. So the Westmore was able to go into more detail with the design, and then we had the more time, to apply it. So they come in at 3 a.m. instead of 5 a.m. so the prosthetics and the molds and everything were much. That's not good.
Ensign Lynch, poor bastard. No, I don't think that's Lynch. Another different poor bastard.
Yeah, different poor bastard. No, this guy's gone. Too far gone. Oh, Picard.
Cold.
Tough decision.
Jean-Luc. It didn't seem like it was that tough of a decision. No.
I feel like he maybe had done it before.
Here we go.
You! How the hell did you... Calm down!
And this, like, honestly, the energy of this exchange is so spot on for me. I love a good ask a question, then tell somebody to shut up energy,
Yeah.
like, which I totally buy that. Like, I agree with.
Yeah. It's not going well for her in the ship.
Yeah.
I'll be right back.
You see Picard is slowly disrobing, like we're working our way to that tank.
Right. So as we wait for Jonathan to get back, let me just remind everybody, if you're just joining us, there's a time code running on screen. That's where we're in the movie. If you want to sync up with us, we're watching Star Trek First Contact, Jonathan Frakes. And here we are. We're in the scene here where Data is waking up, kind of in the midst of all the Borg that are working on him while he's strapped to this table.
And we're just about to meet her.
There were a few questions about this scene and just production wise, how you guys pulled it off.
From thousands of species across thousands of worlds since long before you were.
We're just about to meet her.
They are all Borg.
I am unlike
See if I can find.
the codes stored in my neural net cannot be forcibly removed.
Spiner.
I know. He's the best, isn't he?
He's so good.
So Joshua Gregory, who's watching on CineFix's YouTube channel, wants to know how the scene, which I guess we're not quite there. We'll ask that question when we get there. The scene where we first meet the Borg Queen.
That was John Knoll at the height of his work.
Yeah.
Jonathan, I read that you guys, the only reshoot, I don't know if you even call them reshoots, but you went back and shot some extra Borgifying scenes to kind of
Exactly. That was some of that was used in that opening sequence.
Okay.
To help set up how terrifying they were.
Okay. Was that the studio note you recall, or like where did?
Yes. That was definitely a studio note after the first preview.
Okay.
Or maybe it was when we just showed it to them. It may not even have been, but it was very clear that they wanted to heighten the. Here we go. This hat is great on Cochran, isn't it?
Yes, it's like a Jughead hat.
It's your telescope. That's our ship, the Enterprise.
I think what's interesting too about Cromwell's performance, what you guys did, Cochran, is that he showed up on the old show with Shatner in the 60s, the character, and he's played so differently. Did you recall, did you go back and watch that episode? Did that have any bearing?
It did not. I didn't know that actually until after we had done this.
Okay.
And he never mentioned it. There's a lot of Star Trek I haven't seen.
Yeah.
Including Next Gen.
You wouldn't watch all your episodes?
Good guys.
Obviously the ones I directed, but I find even to this day when I'm at a convention or somewhere in a hotel on the weekend and I bonk through the TV, and if Next Gen is on, I'll stop and say, I wonder which. And some of them I'll remember, and some of them say, I have no idea. I don't remember that guest star. I don't remember that story. It's kind of wonderful to see it for the first time.
Sure, yeah, it's the grind.
So here, while we're on the scene here with Zephyr Cochran again, we've got a couple questions about him. There's one from Dangerous Dak, who's watching on IGN's YouTube, and Scott Martz is watching on the Star Trek First Contact Facebook page. But questions about whether or not Zephyr Cochran's character was based off of Gene Roddenberry. Viewed as a visionary, but kind
Oh.
of actually a party guy.
That's
Was
that's
there?
the first I've ever been asked that question, and it makes, I would say, possibly true. I'd never heard that connection made, but it makes perfect sense knowing both men.
You actually share a birthday with Roddenberry, don't you?
Pardon me?
Do you share a birthday with Roddenberry?
I do.
Yeah.
And two other members of the Star Trek family: Roddenberry, Bob Blackman, the costume designer, and who else? Who played the Doctor in the second season?
Oh, Diana Muldaur?
Very good.
Nice. I didn't know that. Excellent.
Way to pass that test, Scott.
Yes.
Well, I failed the Packlid test from before we were live, so
I think you misheard me. I think
I did. I thought you said make it so. You said
Yeah.
things that make us go.
this is disgusting, isn't it?
It really is. Yeah, this is the sequence that that I was wondering about. If there wasn't some extra bit of The Fly or Videodrome kind of inspiration
Yeah.
mixed in there.
Well, it's also inspired. I don't know if you've seen Picard. I have a scene in one of the episodes of Picard that I did where they are taking the Borg parts, and it's a Borgified eye that we start on. It's very much an homage to this.
Totally, yeah. Actually, it's interesting. Well, you mentioned Picard. Sort of thematically, one of your Picard episodes is a sequel to this in a way. When Patrick and Jerry Ryan kind of have a scene near the end of the one episode. They're reflecting on what it was like to be a Borg and that they're still living with it every day.
One of the best scenes in the show.
It's great.
And it's a small, tasty little scene.
Yeah, it's really good.
And they both admit that they're still haunted.
Yeah.
I never understood why these fucking Jeffries tubes were so small and impossible. And the same thing is true in Discovery. They're impossible to work in. They're uncomfortable. You have to wear knee pads to get through them. Ridiculous.
Well, you're the director. You can't just say, let's just shoot it in engineering instead.
No. The enclosed spaces.
Now, was there ever a romance between obviously these two have a deep connection in this film, but was it ever a romance at any version of the script or in anything you shot?
I think it was a romance right from here. I've always felt that was a very significant part of this relationship. And then when he says goodbye to her at the end, I feel very strongly that he will miss her. He is. Yeah. I always thought that there was an important part of the relationship between Lily and Captain Pecan, the wackiest nut in the galaxy.
But in that scene, when they say goodbye, you don't go for like the full kiss, though, do you? Like you kind of pull back a bit.
But I think it's there. I think and the two actors certainly embraced that relationship. Great respect to these two sort of master actors. My first ray gun.
Yeah.
What
I
was
do always love those sort of instances. It's almost like a trope of the person that's being exposed to this much bigger world or whatever, and they're kind of trying to contextualize it with goofy stuff that they've heard. So that's a really cool moment for her.
I always thought this shot looked so awesome too.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, such a great shot. I'm assuming that's just a green screen in that window or something.
Yeah, but I mean, this is an old movie, and a lot of these shots are holding up.
Yeah. What was the state of the script? No.
No, some of the tight stuff, like that drill into Data's head, wasn't great.
That is a contradiction. The Borg have a collective consciousness.
I don't know. It works on a visceral level.
This is the shot. We've got a bunch of questions about this shot. First of all, from S Freedom, who's on IGN's Discord channel right now. Where did the idea of the Borg Queen coming down as just a head and a mechanical spine come from? Where did that originate?
This started during prep in the design. In one of the visual effects meeting, it was discussed that is there a world where she would come down naked, essentially, and then what if it was her brain, just her brain, and then it developed into the idea that her nerves and her Borg, the power of the Borg was in that stem that came down, that was essentially her. And what was spectacular about the shot, and everyone remembers the shot, and it was beautifully executed and beautifully shot. And John Knoll and I and most people say the reason the shot works so well is because she owned it. She owned it. She played it when she turned her head, when she landed. She felt it. She felt she was turned on by it. It was something. It was powerful. Everything about the shot worked, and you believe this insane idea of somebody descending with a spine and a Borg. You believed it completely because you're watching her face and how this is how I enter. This is how I rule.
Yeah,
and it was all her. It was all Alice.
Yeah, it's a power move of an entrance for sure.
Oh man,
it's hard to top that. Joshua Gregory, who's watching on CineFix, this is a question I was about to bring up earlier. But how did you shoot the scene where it's in one take? Joshua says, my VFX friends and I have been trying to figure out how in 1996 that scene was even done. So,
well, we had a green.
What a cold description.
We had her in a green screen uniform from the shoulders down. Then we did a pass with the green soccer on. Then we did plates, obviously, and we comped the plates in. Now, see, these shots don't really hold up. This is a great idea. But now that effect would be, I mean, the acting's great. But it's like the close-up magic. It's
is that the
level of visual effects now?
Is that a physical prop? Is that a physical prop? The skin, the patch of skin?
With the hair
it's a physical prop that was enhanced by visual effects.
Okay.
But if it's Earth you're talking about, I try to get back whenever I
One thing about
that's the scene that's set up by that first conversation with Data and Picard.
Yes, exactly.
Touching the rocket.
Right.
Feeling.
Sounds Swedish.
Come on. But just enough of a, a little pepper, a little.
Yeah. Now Picard gives a history of the Federation in 30 seconds. We don't have money anymore. One thing about the Borg Queen's makeup too, which is I think terrific, is that unlike most of the Borg, you left Alice's face completely unobscured. Like the actress,
Yes.
It's like what we were saying about LeVar earlier. Like she's able to use the totality of her face for the performance. She doesn't have an eye thing or anything.
Well, I wonder, is the Borg Queen not a complete being, where the others have been assimilated?
Like she's some kind of a a presence that just pops into a body as she needs. Right.
Well, that's how I always thought that she was the queen, because she hadn't been assimilated. She was the assimilator.
Right. And she does show up again in Voyager a couple of times.
Yeah.
Now, how did you feel about that? Did you mind that they used your character like that?
I was thrilled.
I think they even brought Alice back for the finale, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think they did.
There's the Borg.
There's the Borg vision. Yeah, this stuff is good.
Yeah.
And Jerry's score is great in here too.
Yeah. But how far along was the script when you locked in as director? Was it because I know there was a version of the script where Riker was the one fighting the Borg and Picard was down on the planet with Cochrane. Was that before you signed on to direct?
Yes.
Okay.
I never saw that script.
Okay.
The big goodbye. I love that. Now this whole sequence coming up when they go to the nightclub downtown. We shot it at down at Penn Station, and here we go. There's Johnny Phillips, Neelix.
Yeah, another Voyager nod.
One of the funniest living humans.
So for something like the holodeck scene, like, were you guys ever concerned that would maybe like non-Trekkies would lose the thread because now all of a sudden we're in the 1940s?
Well, no, I think, well, I hadn't been. And the scope of this holiday and this wonderful band with this great singer, this brings back fabulous memories. This is the difference between making a television show and making a movie.
Yeah. Dixon Hill even gets to wear a tuxedo in the movie version.
There's Nicky the Nose.
You know, aside from the time and the budget that you mentioned, were there any other differences in your approach between the TV and movies? I mean, particularly with this film, when you know it's the same characters that you'd already made TV shows.
I think I was influenced by Leonetti in terms of the shot making, which helped. I mean, I really like to keep the camera moving, but not in a distracting way. I like to keep the frames. Sherry Lansing once said, "Never be afraid to shoot wide," which I think is great advice. But Patrick loved this.
Yeah, we got a question about this. Somebody, Nate Dove 31, who's watching on IGN's YouTube, particularly about this moment here that's coming up. What kind of preparation and discussion did you, the writers, and Patrick Stewart have about exploring a darker part of Picard's character?
Well, Patrick does this work before he shows up, and all I had to do was let him. We tweaked it a number of different ways. We did probably 5 or 6 takes to see how deep he wanted to go, but this was discussed during prep with Patrick and Ron and Brandon and Rick, and new color in Picard's character.
It's one of your uniforms.
Yes.
Yeah, and you see it here, and there's Ensign Lynch.
There's Ensign Lynch.
And the coldness that where Picard so obsessed with taking out the Borg, he doesn't even give Ensign Lynch a second thought.
And that's the Locutus influence.
Yeah.
And here we go. Here comes
yeah. Dwight Schultz as Barclay.
Is this where we introduced him, or was he in the show already?
He was in the series, and then you guys managed to back for this, like, such a thrill.
Oh,
This always felt to me, Jonathan, you tell me if I'm wrong, but this always felt to me like almost like you and your castmates' real life experience where you just want to go out to dinner or something and you've got fans following you around. Is there anything in there in this scene?
Yes, absolutely. And because
look at them back there.
Yeah, it was such a great choice to just have him out of focus, kind of lingering back there.
And here
Dwight was wonderful at it. Here we go. And look at that smile. And that goofy haircut.
Oh, there are the eyes.
There's LeVar's eye.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's good. But you need to reinforce this copper tubing with a nanopolymer.
That's a cool effect, that eye.
I know this sounds silly, but can I shake your hand?
So this is a guy that approaches you at dinner occasionally?
Doctor, I can't tell you what
Yes.
work with you on this project. I never imagined that I'd be meeting
I think I've probably been that guy once or twice.
I'm sorry. Right.
And God bless you for it.
that eye effect with LeVar, I believe, was a practical effect. I read that there was actually a shot. I don't know, who. Maybe it was Noel's team. I'm not sure, but they shot some kind of a shower gear or something, and then just superimposed that over the eye.
Oh, I didn't know that. Or I didn't remember that.
Yeah, that's what I read. Read it on the internet, so must be true.
Must be true.
Must be true, exactly.
So Karen Peterson, who's following along on the Star Trek Facebook pages, wants to know, and I think you mentioned this earlier, and I'm not sure if we got to it. Do you have a favorite scene in First Contact? I think you mentioned you queued one up, but
I think that it's coming up. It's a scene with Alfred and Patrick, the Moby Dick scene.
We'll talk about it more when we get there.
We'll get to it.
This is great. I gotta take a leak.
Perfect timing. Of course,
he doesn't really. He just had to make that joke.
Yeah. He's always an actor first, performer first.
You're right.
So, Clint, I'm not sure if you know this. You don't know Star Trek in the
probably don't
obsessive level that some of us do, maybe. But Cromwell.
I do. While he's out of the room, I will say that I love that he's asking you things about Star Trek.
Cromwell actually reprised the role as Cochrane for a quick shot in the Star Trek Enterprise pilot for this series with Scott Bakula. He came back, and it's supposed to be him some years after this, where they're sort of launching the first Enterprise, and he makes a very inspiring speech as the character. So the shows were always trying to connect each other in some way.
Right.
In the 21st century, the Borg is still in the Delta Quadrant.
They'll send reinforcements. Humanity will be an easy target.
Hey!
Yo.
You got back just in time for them to realize that they're trying to contact other Borg.
They're going to have to head out to that deflector array.
What sense is futile?
Jonathan, did you like? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say that this scene coming up where they're in the mag boots on the outside of the ship was not our finest hour. I always thought.
I think
here's the shot that you chose to use to promote the movie.
Yes.
Tonight.
Yeah.
I believe that LeVar and I both go full Riker at some point in this scene and put our feet up on the rock.
I wanted to ask you earlier, and I didn't get a chance about the Riker lean, because you were doing the lean earlier. But where did the Riker lean come from?
I don't know. It's been there forever. I stole the walk, the walk where lead with one shoulder from an actor named John Cullum.
Okay.
Who probably stole it from John Wayne. These were a pain in the ass, these helmets. I always watch Gravity and all the films where people are in spacesuits that have space helmets on. And I think about the madness of having a fan, a light, a vent. The plate needs to be removable so that people can get to it to touch the makeup. That people can't keep it on too long because they're claustrophobic or they sweat. Anybody who's involved in this part of the entertainment business knows how complicated spacesuits are.
Yeah. And poor Dorn's got the makeup on under it as well.
I know. And he never ceases to remind us.
There's actually a question about him here. The Jonathan Frakes who's watching on IGN's YouTube. And this is a good question for this sequence too. But did you prefer to keep Worf as a physical character relying on his strength instead of his phaser? Because his phaser gets knocked out. And I keep asking these questions a scene too early, but we'll get to it in a second. But was there a conscious decision to keep Worf more relying on his strength?
That was Ron Branagh. Yeah, I'm sure that was their intention.
primarily signal degradation inherent to organic synthetic transmission.
Do you
Fine.
always talk this much?
Not always, but often.
But often.
Insist on
Oh.
utilizing primitive linguistic communication.
Jonathan, do you just recall all the dialogue because you watched it so many times when you were editing?
Endeavoring to become more
A lot of it comes back,
We used to be
and
exactly like them. Flawed.
the movie was so. I mean, it was such a huge part of my life for so long, and then it was so well received, and it continues to be, and it's filled with so many fond memories that it's great to see it again.
Sure. And then, of course, you came back and made Insurrection. Were you offered Nemesis?
delusional mind.
I wasn't. I wish I had been.
From a small being
Would you have done it?
I understand.
I probably would have. I think
that your goal
I know that my
is to obtain
representation, and although they thought it would not be a great idea to just do Star Trek after Star Trek, but I was sort of. I only ever made 4 movies. 3 of them made money, and then I went to movie jail after Thunderbirds. But let's not ruin a perfectly good. Let's not ruin a perfectly good night.
Love seeing Data kick a little ass.
Yeah, Brett hates action scenes. He hates action scenes.
Does it?
Really?
Oh, he loves letting his stuntman do it.
Look at yourself.
It's very interesting here how he reacts so strongly to being hurt because he's probably never experienced pain before.
Right. Means nothing to you. Why protect it?
Right.
I'm simply imitating the behavior of humans.
I like how challenging she's being in this scene.
Well, it's as if she
She's not-
knows him.
Programming is
She's not telling him anything. She's backing him into these corners to make him kind of come to these realizations.
Yeah,
I'm
she's playing with
assuming-
him he's in her web. It's a very spider situation.
I'm assuming she knows all about him because Picard had been assimilated back on the series, and so she probably knows everything Picard knows. So she's probably
Exactly.
using.
She downloaded everything.
Right.
Familiar with physical forms of
It's like the
Look
Star
how
Trek
hot
works.
that costume is.
if you are referring to sexuality. I am
I have to ask,
Fully functional.
after this, are we to assume that they had sex after this scene?
multiple techniques.
How long has it been since you've used them?
Was there any discussion of that on set? Between the actors and you, and like, it's like, just so we're clear,
Yes. What a great shot. My alien. Old-fashioned and wonderful.
yeah, that is a very sort
Meanwhile-
of film noir kind of framing for a kiss there.
Yeah.
So here's a comment from Andrew White, who's watching on IGN's YouTube.
Mhm.
He always enjoyed the deflector dish scene. Was it difficult to film the scene with the zero-G aspect? So Andrew
was
White actually
difficult.
really enjoyed this scene.
That we were shooting this scene on one stage, and there was a second unit shooting the Borg running through the Borgified corridors on the next sound stage, and we had a video village set up between the 2 stages so that we could watch both units running at the same time. For some reason, that must have been a scheduling mandate. I was always
For the bathroom?
encouraged to stay on budget and on schedule.
I don't care. I don't want to be a statue. Doctor, you stay away from me.
Did you come in on budget and schedule on this?
I did.
Oh, Riker's not messing around anymore.
Well, it's on stun. Come on.
How tough was it for you to balance being on camera? I mean, this is your first feature as a sci-fi movie with a ton of elements going on, and then you're also the lead, one of the leads in the Beat storyline. How did you balance that?
I as my wife pointed out, I was so. I mean, this was all in, as all movies are, to the director in particular. It takes your life over for whatever it is, for a year, in some cases longer. So you breathe it all day, all night. You wake up thinking about it. It's a 24-hour experience. So the advantage of having played Riker for 7 years, and another movie prior to this, and trusting. See, also LeVar is a wonderful director, and Patrick had directed. So I had Matt Leonetti, who was the DP, and LeVar and Patrick I used as my sort of litmus test, and we had the sign or something that I wouldn't have to discuss with anybody. If they thought that I needed to go again, I would just call for another take, and we'd go ahead and take it. If I didn't, I mean, I self-directed a lot by this, not a lot, but enough to know when I had screwed up. But I also found that if I was in a scene with Patrick or with LeVar, I could we had a shorthand about it, and I would trust their instincts about my coverage, for instance.
Sure.
And there is I mean, kidding, but there's a lot to be said for being exhausted, because you don't have time to be as nervous as we can all get, and when your nerves prevent you from. I mean, physically, I remember Riker from season 1. He was so stiff and so awkward, and so that was all nerves. That was all, it was a skin tight spacesuit on a brand new television show. That the Riker in this movie is, he's wearing a leather jacket, and he's directed a movie, and his life is fucking great. Let's face it.
You can't even get you can't even get those free Riker figures.
I know it. We just had a baby. We had a wonderful little boy at home. Jeannie and I were both working. It was a great time.
You were a new dad at this point, pretty much.
Yeah.
So here we are back with the this little bit of action here at the dish scene, and Andrew White, who had previously left a comment saying that he always enjoyed the deflector scene, has now left another comment saying, since you say the deflector scene wasn't your finest hour, what elements of this scene would you like to change?
I thought those little chips were not the world's greatest. I think that the fact that we were on the scope of the set wasn't huge. The costumes were unwieldy. It just, in light of some of the fabulous zero-G stuff that I've seen in film since, is I think what I compare it to. This was pretty cool. The blood was pretty cool.
Yeah. And they let you use actual blood in the Star Trek 6, the last one with the original crew. They made them do purple blood for the Klingons.
Yeah, not sure why.
I think they were more worried about the violence or something. I don't know.
Maybe. And this is, I think this is what it was. The simplicity of this locking system.
It was too simple, you mean?
Yes, exactly. It didn't maintain the gravitas that I think we were looking for. We had to go out on the outside of the ship to do this. Really? To turn that dial? They had to get into the freezer? I mean...
I don't know, Jonathan. I think it still plays pretty well. My wife, who's not into Star Trek, watched this recently, and she enjoyed it. I mean, it's a different...
Well, I mean, I think it's fine, but I just like this. This is that looks like 70s TV. But
I'll say that in front of Stewart.
Yeah.
At the same time, we're seeing an aspect of the Enterprise we never saw before. You'd never, on TV, you would never have gotten any of these shots. The set would not have existed. Right?
The set would not have existed. We never would have had time to do the wire work and the wire removal and the big green screen with the planet. So it's filmic.
I mean, the other thing too is you guys were working with a relatively limited budget for a big tentpole feature, I think.
$45 million.
Yeah, so
it made 220.
That's not bad.
Not bad.
It's good math.
Yeah, that's good math for Paramount. That's how I got to Insurrection.
Poor Hawk. We hardly knew him.
You knew that. Yeah, you knew that was coming though.
Yeah.
He's Borgified. Let's see. Oh, that's a good reveal.
Yeah.
That's a great face to be Borgified too.
Nice and symmetrical.
And bam.
There you go.
Bye-bye.
Someone had to go back to the 24th century and call Hawk's parents and tell him not only did he die, but he turned into a Borg, and we left him floating in space in the year 2064 or whatever. Classic Worf line.
We've had a change of plans, Data.
Yeah.
Look at that shot. That shot looks awesome.
I know. That's Noel. That's fabulous.
Assimilate this.
Yeah, I will assimilate this. That's a good line.
And that's exactly the tone of this kind of movie, right? That line fits in there.
Of course.
Listen to the score here.
It's so good.
It's so victorious. And now, meanwhile, in the B story.
Right.
Only got an hour to go, Doc. How you feeling?
I got a 4-alarm hangover.
Jonathan, did you take any swag from the set? Like, did you keep like a uniform or prop?
I did. I stole this spacesuit, this blue spacesuit.
Nice.
And I think I took one of the uniforms. This I worried about this scene always because the three of us were, just by nature of the set, locked into these chairs in a tiny little cockpit. So the coverage was limited. And I remember thinking, are these scenes too long to hold up? And I find they do hold up. But it's always a worry when you don't have, when the actors aren't going to move and it's illogical for the camera to move too much.
Sure.
Because I remember learning early on.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was going to say one of the things that I learned early on is to try not to repeat shots, and there's an inevitability about these scenes where you're going to repeat these medium close-ups over and over, and see, it's very TV, but it doesn't bother people because they're learning something about Cochrane and about Riker's relationship with Cochrane. Yeah.
And then later on, when you actually blast off, you've got all the visual effects stuff to support it as well, right?
And it's also we've just come from the massive cinematic visual effects elements of the outside of the ship scene. Now we're back in the 20th century into something into a set that people will recognize or how they imagine a spaceship was in the year we made this movie.
Right.
There's something that I like about the scene, though, the way that, especially the way that your coverage is used. Like, it really, the thing that struck me about it rewatching this movie just the other night was like, what a good listener Riker is. Like this is a scene about you giving him space to kind of vent, right? Like,
thank you.
You're welcome.
That's a very important element. Now Patrick's got the vest. Now Patrick's got the vest off too. You notice?
Yeah, he's working his way.
Yeah, we mentioned that earlier. We're just slowly getting down to that undershirt.
Yeah. He's hardcore here too. Even Worf is like Worf is shook right now.
Wait, Captain, our weapons are useless. We must activate the auto-destruct sequence and use the escape pods to evacuate the ship. Now!
Yes.
Yeah, this is where he really goes.
He's getting amped up here.
Sir,
Yeah.
we have lost the Enterprise. We should not sacrifice... We have not lost the Enterprise, Mr. Worf. We are not going to lose the Enterprise. Not to the Borg, not while I'm...
Did you guys how did you work these scenes into the schedule? Did you really make a point to have fun with these scenes, to give it a little extra time or anything like that? Because like there are these scenes where Patrick Stewart's getting to really go to places that Picard hasn't gone before.
Well, ironically, these are the scenes that would go the fastest because he knows the character so well. The scenes that in prep, the late great Jerry Fleck was my first AD on both of these movies, who left us far too soon. But we had decided that where you need to leave time to breathe in your schedule is with the unknown. It's with the stuff with Alfred and Cromwell and Alice and all the incredible visual effects and new sets. But scenes like this, where we're on the bridge with our crew, there was a couple, yeah. Yes, I would say old hat, but there's certainly, you're going to be able to get it in X amount of hours. Here we go.
This is your scene.
I love this scene.
But everybody out there thinks that staying here and fighting the Borg is suicide. They're just afraid to come in here and say it.
The crew is accustomed to following my orders.
This is great for Lily here too. Like her arc has kind of come full.
Yeah, she's
full
stuck in this
circle
ship,
here
and now, she's observed enough to know how this place runs.
I've been around for a couple hours. I feel like I can shout at you.
Well, and nobody speaks truth to power.
Yeah.
She's,
Right, she's not beholden to him the way the rest are.
Her function in this movie is really great.
Yeah. It goes right back to what I said earlier, a couple hours ago, about this script. It's so dense and so layered and so well thought out, and it reveals itself like an onion each time I watch it. And I hear you guys bring up elements that of foreshadowing that I hadn't even thought about that were in the script.
Yeah. Well, of course, those guys, Moore and Braga, Ron Moore and Ron and Braga, went on to do, then they went to they were doing Deep Space Nine and Voyager, and then Battlestar Galactica, and now the Orville, who you still work with Braga on the Orville.
Yeah.
How long did it take to shoot this? How many days?
This scene was a day.
Really?
We did the scene in a day. Yeah.
Oh, come on, Captain. You're not the
And it is one of the iconic Star Trek scenes now.
Yeah.
Can you go into more about why this is your favorite scene? I mean, obviously, there's a lot to chew on here, but
I think the simplicity of the staging, the power of the two actors, who I love personally and professionally. It was late enough in the schedule that I felt like we had a really good movie already in the can, and my appreciation of the meeting of good acting and good writing, and yeah.
He broke his little ships.
You broke his little ships.
You broke your little ships.
Sacrifice the Enterprise. We've made too many compromises already. Too many retreats. They invade our space, and we fall back.
And it's got great peaks and valleys in it.
And we fall back. Not again.
Yeah.
The line must be drawn here.
So
Yeah.
that
line must be drawn here.
Super iconic. Do you remember how many takes it took, or not how many takes it took, but how many takes did you get of that line?
I think I rarely went to double digits in takes. So, 4, 5, 6, somewhere in there, probably. Again, with Patrick, and by this time, Alfred was in our family. It was all you had to do was find the right frame, and you were going to get this. You broke your little ships. That's another one of my favorites.
Now, did you guys specifically choose which ships were going to be broken, or was it just whatever happened once he hit the?
I think it was whatever happened. I believe that some of those were glued in so they wouldn't.
Okay.
We only had to do a couple passes on that broken glass.
Okay.
And here's the quotes. And then Patrick went on to play in Moby Dick.
That's right.
Yeah.
For Hallmark Channel, I think.
You got to respect a guy who needs a Melville reference to calm down.
I'm definitely more Lily than Picard in terms of whether or not I've read Moby Dick.
Right.
It's
Good
terrific.
question. Good question for Jonathan. Have you ever read Moby?
That's why I left.
I tried to.
Is that why you left? You ducking that question?
I couldn't answer that question.
But here we are.
I follow a Twitter handle that quotes Moby Dick.
Oh wow. Here we are. Lily turned him around.
Yep.
Big wide shot. Jerry helps.
So now that we're Jerry helps. So now that we're
He
back
does.
here with Riker and strapped into his spaceship, we got to ask you a couple of. This is a question that's come up a couple of times. There's Charlie Walker, who's watching on Star Trek's Facebook page. Jacoby Roby again on IGN's YouTube, wanting to know, Jonathan, if you step over chairs when you sit down in them the way that you did on the show.
I do when the chair back is below the danger zone.
So you do it responsibly.
I measure first. I measure twice and cut once.
Never the first time you meet a chair. You do it one pass of the chair just to make sure.
That started in 10 forward because the backs of the chairs in 10 forward were so low. It was easy, and then I thought, this is really a hot dog asshole thing to do. Nobody's gonna let me do this, and then nobody stopped me. It's such a cocky, unattractive, kind of bad cowboy move. Whoever did the compilation, the YouTube compilation of Riker Sits Down.
Yeah.
It went viral, and it was even more embarrassing. It made me strangely, more proud.
Yeah, it is a great move. I love the idea that it got life because nobody stopped you. Like, so that was just kind of a spur of the moment thing you decided to do, and nobody told you no.
And I didn't think I did it that many times, but boy, when you see that YouTube, it feels like it was. And then it turns out the chair in Picard's ready room was just in the right height that I could get over that one too.
This is a great shot.
Yeah, this is another cool shot. It reminds me of the one we talked about earlier, where there's like that slow push followed by the quick walk down the hallway when in the missile silo. But it's that really, really slow pull out, and then the urgency ramps back up in the second half, which is really cool.
Yeah, the key grip separated those two consoles, Data and Geordi's console, and put them on wheels so that we could push in through them. As I remember that distinctly.
Yeah,
Grip's got to be some of the most ingenious people on the planet.
He forgot his music. Oh, there it is. Thank God.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6.
Now, did you pick this song?
I was just gonna ask, how did the decision come about for the song?
We were trying to get Jumpin' Jack Flash. We were trying to get Rocket Man. We had a list.
Steppenwolf was the first to say first.
Well, no, Steppenwolf was the first we could afford.
Yeah, got it. On time and on budget, even in the music department.
Yeah. And the wonderful song at the end, Peter Lorison found for us. That's the Roy Orbison, I think,
Okay.
when the Vulcans shows up.
Right.
No spoiler alert, but the Vulcans do show up. It is First Contact.
Who are the Vulcans? I always thought
You'll see.
I always thought it was funny here that Riker and Geordi presumably like displaced two poor bastards from history who were supposed to fly with Cochrane, but once you guys showed up, you were like, we'll take the back seat on this first historic flight. And of course, a version of that. Yeah, that shot is great, and a version of that wound up in the Star Trek Enterprise opening credits.
A version of that shot?
Yeah, the opening credits to the Bakula series sort of traces the development of like space travel in the Star Trek world. It goes from like actual astronauts to the Star Trek world, and there's a shot of I don't know if it's the exact shot of the Phoenix, but it looks very similar of it coming up and the two nacelles popping out. Yeah.
You're not leaving, are you?
Lily, when I was held captive on the Borg ship, my crew risked everything.
Here we go. You can feel it here.
Yeah.
There's this, you could feel it when the Watcher Caboose bit, like right as the door was closing earlier before they went out, that you could feel it there too. And I think this is actually a tighter shirt on Picard here, with the sleeves rolled up as we approach the tank top.
We watch the development.
Yeah, this is just our stay tuned for the tank top watch.
And this is a cool little thing that like you don't know the ship can do. Oh, those things all pop out and everyone escapes on those pods.
Who knew? Now he's got to do his hard work. His buddy's in trouble. This movie's got good pace.
Yeah,
it does. It really moves. What a great little acknowledgement. Like he pauses. He doesn't even turn his head, but you can tell he's acknowledging the Borg next to him. He's good.
Yeah, he sure is. He sure is. Afraid and yet unafraid.
Right. Was there much rewriting going on while you guys were shooting, or additions being made to the script?
Very little. Ron and Brandon were there with us, and we'd lock it all in rehearsal. Sometimes, if we had a big scene the following day, everybody would we do a read to make quick cuts. That, but the script was in good shape by the time we started to shoot, and the nuance changes. Patrick was always very, very aware of language, obviously, but of staying on story. And I'm very conscious of staying on. When I was learning acting, I used to break my scripts down. We always had the beats. It was all about the beats. And when I prepare now, I still do the same thing my acting teachers taught me about putting a line through the scene where the beats are, and then writing the intention of that beat or the verb, that the action of, so that the simplest techniques of telling the story aren't lost or don't get muddy and don't get, don't overshoot it and don't overstate it. And yet don't use 10 words when 4 will do, but make sure they're the right 4 words.
Right.
And language, my father was an English professor, and Patrick obviously is a Shakespearean actor, and Rick is very, very well educated, and Ron and Brandon have a great love of the language. And most of these actors are theater actors in this company. So there's a great love of language and respect for language, so that every word is, nothing's thrown away.
Right.
There's a question from Herbie, who's watching on IGN's YouTube. Right as we get here, and we've already seen Picard sort of give the self-destruct order and all that do for this version of the Enterprise. But Herbie's question is, do you wish you could have used the Enterprise D in this movie instead of the E? I always thought seeing the ship from the show being assimilated might have been more impactful.
Wow.
So do you ever wish that
Scott, do you want to take that question?
Well, when we were on the set in 1995, I mean, as a fan, I don't think that really would have worked. I always felt like the D was the show on the small screen, and things had progressed to a new point, and this new ship was the movie ship. So for me personally, I don't think I would have needed to see that, but I get the impulse.
Auto-destruct sequence deactivated.
Jonathan more or less agree?
Yes, completely. Another thing that I noticed, the moments that are dated, no pun intended. Some of these graphics, these Akutas, we call them the Akutograms because Michael Akuta and Denise designed all these. I could have shot these with a little more variety, elegance, angle, reflection. Some of those look flat to me.
I do really like Data's look here at the end, and like with the skin on the face and even his hair. Yeah.
Yeah, it's creepy.
Yeah, it's got a little Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah.
There's a famous picture, not famous, but there's a picture that we all signed from this movie, I think, in which we're all in the bridge and Brent is profile. Does that sound familiar to you? And we're all standing in full uniform. And I think it's because he didn't want to show this side of his face when we took the picture. I'm not sure if I have the memory right. Would that be this movie or would that be another?
I think you're right. I think that sounds familiar, and because you guys happen to be doing like publicity stuff the day that he had that. Yeah, I think you're right about that. That sounds familiar.
Yeah. No, this prop feels dated too. Scary as hell, but. In case nobody could hear me.
It's pretty rattly in there.
Yeah. There was a lot of camera shaking going on.
See, yeah, so Patrick is down to the tank top finally. We've been waiting for this.
Finally, we can
this
relax.
This is the runner for you, isn't it? That's a good line.
Yeah.
And just relishing.
Nice shot too.
That is just such a delicious line for her to say.
Yeah, she's so sexual and emotional and erotic, and I think that goes. Yes, bam, whip pan.
Jonathan, had you ever seen Ghost Story, which I feel like was her first thing all the way back from like 1980 or something? But she plays a creepy, sexy ghost in that.
Oh, I don't think I have. I remember her from the movie about the running on the beach.
Chariots of Fire?
Chariots of Fire.
Okay.
After doing his own stunts.
We have and this is the pinnacle of Patrick Stewart Gunn's sequence. And we have had a handful of questions about the decision to make him kind of an action star here. And we talked about
well made.
Sure. And we talked about earlier versions of the script where Riker and Picard were swapped. But just
I can't imagine how that would have held on, given his experience as Locutus. It just wouldn't have been as impactful. There we go. This is pretty horror movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, just dissolving like that.
Yeah.
There's something nice about this the B plot here and how you're just kind of having fun, like because
Yeah.
you're not in contact with what's going on in the Enterprise. Like this is just a real trip for you.
Yeah, it's nicely cut, and it goes back to what we talked about earlier today about the action adventure comedy aspect of it. If it were all, and the action adventure stuff is left here in the B story. The horror movie stuff got very, very heavy, and as it got heavy, we came back tonally, and the colors and the flavors and the music, both literal and metaphorically, change. And so it's what I said about the pace. The pace of this movie really holds up because both stories are strong, and we care the characters in both stories.
Yeah. And all three stories manage to intersect in meaningful ways. Nothing feels like it's just there for humorous reasons or whatever.
Yeah. Here's the ultimate revenge right here. This is like Lynch. Acting required. And
yeah, it's great. It's that coldness coming back again.
Yeah.
And they had that Borg Queen head. Blinky Spiner. They had that Borg Queen head as a promotional item when they were pushing Star Trek Picard at Comic-Con last summer. One of the things they had on display, that prop.
Oh, I bet they did. This is the condition his head was in when we took that photo, I think.
Okay.
Oh, got it.
Brought me closer to humanity than I ever thought possible. And for a time, I was tempted by her offer.
Yeah.
How long a time?
0.68 seconds.
See? Another one.
Yeah.
Just a little soupçon.
Right. It's very emotional, the moment, but it's also using and too.
Yeah. And that's the genius of Brent as well. That's Data in the right hands. I can't imagine. Obviously there were others who auditioned, but I just can't imagine Data played by anyone else.
Yeah. By the way, I have to point out that April 5th, which is what First Contact Day is also my wedding anniversary.
By coincidence, I hope.
By coincidence, yes.
Yeah, okay. Sure.
That's the story. That's the story, and stick with it.
That's the public-facing version of that story is, look at that. So we talked a little bit about sort of that cold, sort of violent streak that Picard's got, and you mentioned it's the Locutus that's kind of always in him. Does Picard? I mean, as we continue to follow his life, does Picard still have Locutus in him, and how did that impact his character?
I think we saw a glimmer of it in the scene that Scott mentioned earlier in Picard, the series, where he and Seven share a shared experience by talking about having been Borgified. So that again is just peppered in cleverly by Shaban and Akiva and Alex Kurtzman in a way that it's an important factor, and I think it will be used sparingly but effectively going forward.
Yeah. Jonathan, will you be back to direct more Picard season 2, or is it too early to say?
Yeah, I've been asked, so I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait to get back to work.
Yeah. This is a nice touch right here.
There we go.
Yeah. They don't actually share much screen time, but you feel the connection between them.
Yeah. This is a beautiful theme.
Yeah, it's really nice.
It's like the credits.
Yeah.
Great sting right there for the ears.
Yeah. And then what are we going to do? We're going to do both? Yes, we'll do this. And of course, try it my way. This is a great beat.
Was there a version where he actually did the thing, or?
No, it was, this was always the plan.
Thanks.
And again, it's without irony, and yet it's human versus alien. I think it's I really like the way this works.
Yeah.
And now here we go. This is
This is really like a kind of like I don't want them. I want them to be able to have more time together.
yeah, I do too. And the slow push helps. It's a yeah.
That polite
They shared
peck
a
on the
lot.
cheek with just a little bit of linger.
Yeah, and she was leaning in.
Jonathan, I think you got to direct an
Wow.
episode in season 2 where he goes back to visit her.
Work that in.
Yeah.
Captain, I've reconfigured our warp field to match the chronometric readings of the Borg sphere.
Recreate the vortex command.
Nice to reintroduce the bridge. Keep the camera going.
Mr. Data, laying a course for the 24th century. I suspect our future is...
Was there ever a version of this where you kept going just a little bit longer to see that the 24th century was fine instead
I don't
of
understand the question.
I mean, instead of just seeing them go away, like, was there ever any thought about actually showing them arrive back home to see that they had
No,
succeeded?
No, I don't think so. I think this is the...
Here's Lee Orbison.
Yeah. And there's the repeat on him kicking the jukebox.
James
And the
Cromwell dancing it just makes me happy.
It makes me happy too, and
Yeah.
It's a beautiful crane shot. This is a pretty good movie.
It's a good movie.
It was a good movie. Yeah.
Is that a matte painting? How did you achieve that?
That's a set extension. The pullback, and then the this becomes a matte painting with the trees and the sky. But that set was built up in the Angeles Crest Forest, that entire bar.
Right. Okay.
So we pulled back, and there was no green. Marty Hornstein, there's the great Jerry Fleck, Rosemary, who was on all of our movies. Well,
Thank you for watching that with us. We've got. Can you stick around for a few more minutes? We got a couple other questions we want to get to.
absolutely.
That's cool. Let me see if we can find the right ones here. First of all, the other thing I wanted to ask. We wanted to ask you this because we're watching First Contact. Obviously, did you see the Pentagon just declassified footage of UFOs?
No, but I did hear them refer to the somebody in the administration referred to the way they were attacking the coronavirus vaccine was at warp speed.
Sorry, let me just tracking down the right questions here. So,
when you look at these credits, you must recognize a ton of names, though, right?
I mentioned Lukenbach and John Eves. I still work with.
Right.
Elliot Marks. May he rest in peace. Wayne Tidwell, that whole family has been working. I worked with him on Orville. There's Terry Frazee. He and the Frazee family. He's the one who taught me. I said, "Are we going to blow up the garden or something when they bombed the village?" He said, "There's a big feature, Frakes. We're going to blow up the whole village." I get it.
Blow the whole thing up. Here's a question from Will McGrinsey on IGN's YouTube channel. He says, you have a reputation as a popular and efficient director, even earning the nickname Two Takes Frakes. How do you prep, and do you think your process is rare or unique among directors? That's Will's question. My question is that really your nickname?
I can tell you, I'll answer the second question first.
Okay.
I believe that prep is, and most directors believe, that prep is the most important part of our job. So I don't do it differently, better or worse than anybody else, but it is without a doubt the most important part of the work. So that when you do get on the floor, you have a plan. You can vary from the plan, but you have a plan and you can execute it. Two takes Frakes implies that I shoot fast, that I would shoot only 2 takes. What the truth is, you saw the name Marty Hornstein fly by there. He was the producer, what they call the line producer on the movie, and he represented Paramount. He was the guy from the studio. And I was on the set, and I had done a shot that went wonderfully, and it was take 1. And I looked around, I checked the cameraman, I checked Matt, the DP, and I checked with the actors. Everybody good? But yeah, I said, print it. Let's move on. And Marty came up to me and he said, no, you have to print at least 2 takes, Frakes. Now there is why you came to this watching with right.
Yeah, that's why we watch from home.
The true story. Thank you guys. This has been a blast.
Here's one more. Let me ask you a couple more here. There's I wanted to make sure to ask you this one. This is a question that actually showed up very early on, and I've kind of been saving it. But Dave Goldfarb, who's watching on CineFix's YouTube channel.
No way.
Jonathan, do you remember crashing your golf cart onto the set? It was a huge morale booster for us crew members. He was your DGA Borg Wrangler, Dave Goldfarb.
David Goldfarb was he was the one who I referred to earlier. He ran the Borg camp. He was the 3AA member who literally ran the Borg village, and we were trying to identify Borg characters from this film to use clips of in Picard. And the editor contacted me, and I said, so-and-so and so-and-so. And I said, let's contact Rosemary, who's the second who I mentioned earlier. And Rosemary said, let's contact Goldfarb, which I believe we did. Hello, David. Thanks for watching, and thanks for all your hard work.
And do you remember crashing your golf cart onto the set?
Maybe I did.
Okay. Fair enough.
That was on another movie, though. That was on Insurrection.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Doesn't count then.
Doesn't, yeah. Question retracted. Tony Jurgilis, who's watching on the Star Trek's official Facebook page. Is there any backstory on how the Borg Queen came about? I think we touched on this a little bit during the show, but is there any like in canon backstory? What was her backstory for this film?
I can't answer that one with any kind of confidence. Scott?
I don't know, actually. Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know. I like Jonathan's kind of the presence of the Borg that just kind of, was there before the Borg and is the Borg and assumes a body here or there as she needs to.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That maybe she's a personification of an idea or of the assimilation itself. But Ron and Brannon would be the ones to ask.
Yeah, there's probably some explanation in a book somewhere,
Yeah.
But those things aren't necessarily canon. So.
Got it. Well, let's. Here's a good one. one more. Jim, who's watching on IGN's YouTube. If there was one thing you could change about the movie, thematic, cinematic, story-wise, what would it be?
I think I mentioned them as we were going along. There were some shots that could have been more elegant, more interesting. Pretty proud.
To some of the technical aspects, but
Yeah.
but otherwise, because we did talk a lot about pacing. And here's the other thing: when was the last time you actually watched this movie?
I think it was when I was in London doing the DVD add-on, and that was, God, 10 or 15 years ago.
Wow.
And it holds up.
I like this movie though.
It was a pleasure sitting here watching it with you and watching you enjoy it again.
Yeah.
You guys are wonderful. I enjoyed this evening in a way that I didn't know I would. So I thank you for including me, and we'll do it again.
Great. Yes,
thank you so much.
very much for being here. And thank you, everybody who is watching at home. Come back tomorrow night. We've got more Watch From Home Theater tomorrow night. We'll be watching Extraction. A bunch of people that Netflix's Extraction. So be sure to be here tomorrow night, 5 o'clock Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. And Jonathan, thank you again. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure's mine.
Good night, everybody.
He's out.